I've recently had a few people tell me that life overseas isn't nearly as glamorous as it seems, and thrown out a number of reasons why the average person shouldn't do it. Today, I'm going to respond and tell you why I think this lifestyle of living overseas is open to anyone. Let me share with you a tweet we recently posted that says, "At our core, we're entrepreneurs, creators, and optimists. We welcome all, but are likely not the best fit for defeatists who couch their pessimism by saying there's nowhere to go. There's always an option and always somewhere to go." And I believe that. I've been a lifetime entrepreneur. I believe that there are always opportunities. And as much as I may be pessimistic in many situations, in the macro sense, I'm very optimistic that whatever you want to achieve is possible. And so what one person replied to that is, respectfully, I've lived overseas for 14 years. It's been expensive. It's been damaging to career and social life, and it simply isn't a reality for a lot of people born without money or an ancestry passport. Please acknowledge that. Now, I'm passing the comment along to you, but I'm not going to acknowledge that. I'm going to go through each of those points today and push back on some of the reasons why I think people do take a somewhat defeatist approach to living overseas. From my perspective, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur that we talk to, if you're the 7 or 8 figure investor that we talk to, you have dramatic lifestyle, personal relationship, tax, and freedom benefits to be gained from moving overseas. If it's your first time here, my name is Andrew Henderson, the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We run a boutique consultancy for aforementioned 7 and 8 figure investors and entrepreneurs who want to reduce their taxes, who want to get dual citizenship, protect their assets all overseas. I'm also the host of the biggest and best offshore conference where we teach this stuff. It's called Nomad Capitalist Live. And I'm going to tell you, I have lived overseas for many years now. I've completely cut my ties with my home country. I do not have the option anymore to go back and simply move back to the United States. I'm no longer a U.S. citizen. And I made that decision because I believe that you have, some folks, I don't know if this person is like this, but a lot of people think that by moving overseas, life's going to be glamorous. All their problems are going to go away. And that's just not true. I think our audience has a certain number of folks who are just miserable and they're looking for a solution to all of life's problems. And yes, moving overseas can be a solution, but it can't be a solution if you don't want it to be. So if you're just a miserable person and you're just looking to kind of fantasize about something else, going overseas is not going to help you. Because I can tell you there was an adjustment period for me where I'm like, oh, this is stressful. Oh, I don't like this. Now, what I've learned is the places where I felt stressful, because I did a period of exploration for many years where I went to many different countries. And there were places where I just felt stressful. And my gut instinct now is when I go to a place like that, I just get out, right? I mean, for example, I went to Bangkok, Thailand. I know a lot of folks like that, and I fully respect that. It just feels wrong to me. I can't even explain it. It's just a feeling that I have. I don't feel well there. And so when I spent a month there the first time, it got to me. And it just, the best thing was just to move on. But overall, my goal was, how am I going to improve my life? We teach people and we work with clients here on reducing their taxes and increasing their optionality in their business and with their wealth. That part's straightforward. But you can dramatically improve your lifestyle. I mean, if you go to other countries, maybe you'll have a better social life. Maybe you'll have better relationships. I can tell you, when I first started going to Europe, when I was in my early 20s, girls in the United States weren't particularly interested in this kind of guy who was like, I'm starting businesses. And yet I found that people in Europe and then later in Asia were like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Like, tell me more. Like, there's just kind of a greater fit there. And that was one of the reasons that kind of got me started, as, many 23, 24-year-old guys would be motivated by. And so, you can potentially find that. But if you go around being a miserable person, obviously no one's going to want to talk to you and you're not going to improve anything, right? So you've got to commit to looking at going where you're treated best, as we say, and saying, okay, what's the best tax situation? Where can I find the most freedom? But also, where can I find the best lifestyle? Where are the kind of people that I want to meet? Where are the kind of people who are going to support me if I'm building a business? If I'm in crypto, right? I mean, people go to countries like Portugal, for example, to be in crypto. We've had a number of online poker players that we've helped. Where are those guys living? A bunch of them were in Malta at one point. I mean, like, where do I want to go? What do I want to accomplish? What's my desired lifestyle? You can build an ideal life. And so to say that living overseas is damaging, to me, it's the exact opposite, because you can build literally whatever it is that you want. If you want to live on a beach, you can choose the best beach. Listen, if you're like me, you were born in Ohio in the United States, I guess, sure, I went to the beach in Lake Erie. Probably not the kind of beach most people are looking for. But if I'm going to move to California, why not move to a place where I'm not going to be taxed to oblivion, where the people are perhaps more the kind of people that I would want to hang out with, where I've got a lower cost of living, I can put more money into growing my business. Why wouldn't I make that choice to say, I'm going to find a great beach in Bali, or I'm going to find a great beach in Thailand, or I'm going to find a great beach in Portugal, or in Cyprus, or anywhere else? Why not choose the best place? Why not figure out, again, where the relationships are, where the taxes are, where the freedom is, and build your life around that? Because for me, I never really felt as comfortable in the United States. And so it was easier for me. But I think that no matter, even if you are comfortable in your country, you can go somewhere else and you can build a better life. So let's talk about these points that he's making. It's been expensive to live overseas. And certainly if he's talking about expensive in the context of, monetarily expensive, hey, you can choose to live in Georgia, Armenia, Ecuador, parts of Thailand, Vietnam. I mean, there's plenty of very, very cheap places to live. Obviously, there's also expensive places to live, and everyone should choose. I think that after many years of living overseas, I'm actually seeking out more expensive places sometimes, because I do feel that there's a return on investment. You do have the kind of people around you that you want to network with, but expensive, that can be as expensive or inexpensive as you want. In fact, I would say that a lot of people in my situation who are just starting out in their business should find very inexpensive places to go, not just in terms of living, but in terms of hiring, in terms of everything. So you can do that. Damaging to career and social life. Now, when it comes to career, I mean, certainly we talk to entrepreneurs and investors here. And I have worked with folks where they've got a job in Saudi Arabia or the UAE, for example. And for them, they have to keep their current citizenship. Even if they're American and they're just paying a bunch of taxes on their high salary, they've got to keep that because they get a special salary package in some of these countries because they have, quote unquote, a good citizenship. And so if they were just to become, a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, they might not get that package anymore, as kind of silly as that thinks. They're the same person. They had the same education. They lived in that country for so many years, but, if they change their citizenship, there may be a disadvantage. If you're in that position, obviously, you can weigh, hey, I've got a $500,000 a year job. I've got $1 million portfolio. Hey, it makes sense to, keep the U.S. citizenship, pay taxes on the $500,000 above the foreign earned income exclusion, and just take the hit on the portfolio growth, rather than going out and getting a citizenship and renouncing, because otherwise I don't have the $500,000 income. If you have $500,000 income and $50 million in wealth, hey, maybe it makes more sense to build the $50 million in wealth and be a citizen of somewhere else. But those are the kind of decisions you would make when it comes to your career. We do hear from doctors. Listen, if you're a doctor in the United States, you're probably not going to make much money, more money anywhere else in the world for the most part. I've had some doctors in Canada and the UK that we've worked with where they do pretty well. But obviously, if you're going to move to, the aforementioned Ecuador, there's no doctor there, I don't think, making $1 million a year as some of the doctors we've worked with, let alone millions of dollars a year. Now, there may be an opportunity to build some kind of medical business. There may be a way to do telemedicine and earn a high income. That's increasingly a thing. But again, I mean, that's something that you have to consider. Other than that, career for me as an entrepreneur, I can build my career as an entrepreneur in another country. Now, one thing that I don't do anymore is I don't do speaking engagements in the United States. I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with going and asking for access. And so I just don't go and do that. And, I've got some other, financial concerns. But listen, if you are still a U.S. citizen and you just want to go back and give a speech in the United States, you can do that, right? And so if that's where something that you believe adds value to your business, that's not going to harm your career. Nobody said that, if you leave the Canadian tax net, leave the Australian tax net, leave the German tax net, you can't go back, to give a speech or to have a meeting every once in a while. There may be some tax planning around what activities you're doing there, but that can be resolved. What other career implications may exist? I don't know. Social life, listen, I think a lot of us live a distance from many of our friends. When I lived in the United States, I had friends in New York, friends in Chicago, friends in Southern California. Then one of them moved to Kansas City. I was living in Arizona, right? And I had some friends in Arizona, but a lot of the people I talked to didn't live in Arizona. We'd call each other on the phone. They'd occasionally come to me. I'd occasionally go to them. We'd meet in different places. I think that's increasingly a norm in the Western world. And so was that a social life, right? I mean, I think you can certainly recreate that in any other place around the world. There are expats who get together, and depending on what kind of expats you want to meet, you go to that kind of place. I mean, you can move to anywhere. I think people sometimes look at, everyone's going to Chiang Mai, Thailand, or everyone's going to Medellin, Colombia. No, you can go to Dublin, Ireland. You can go to London. You can go to Geneva. You can go to Singapore. You can go to Dubai. I mean, there's so many different places that serve so many kinds of people, and each has its own social life. And you've got to figure out where that social life is. If you're single and looking for relationships, what kind of person are you looking for? Where are you going to find that kind of person who maybe shares your values, shares the culture that you want? And so the idea that, living overseas is damaging to a career and social life, to me, is kind of silly, because you have such a wide ocean of places to choose from and approaches to choose from that you don't have in one singular country, where maybe people speak the same language as you. Again, there's countries like the UK, Ireland, Singapore, plenty of people speak English around the world. But you can find places in this wide open sea that is the world, where I think you can create a better social life. And now I have friends in some of the places where I live, but also friends who are in places where I don't live, because I've met them along my travels. And again, we get together the same way I did in the US. And when I go to Portugal, when I go to Georgia, when I go to Colombia, when I go to Mexico, I meet with them and we spend time together. And so I don't really think this has to be damaging to career or social life at all. So the idea that, as the commenter says, it's simply not a reality to live overseas for a lot of people who are born without money. To me, money has nothing to do with it. I mean, you can move to any number of emerging or frontier economies at any age and start a much higher probability business. We've talked for years about the guy who created a multi-million-dollar chain of ice cream parlors in Cambodia. Why? Because when he went, there really weren't any ice cream parlors. It's like a brand new treat, right? And he had the market to himself. We've talked about stories in countries all around the world. There are still countries in Eastern Europe where I'm waiting and begging and hoping for someone to start some kind of real estate agency that actually works and answers the phone and shows properties. You can make a fortune doing that. You don't need to be born with money. Now, if you already have money, the kind of people that we work with, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs and investors, then sure, you have money and you're going to have a lot easier time adapting somewhere else. I don't want to tell you that life overseas is perfectly glamorous, right? I think you see a lot of these kind of digital nomads who are like, look at me, I'm in Thailand and everything's amazing. You're going to have problems in life as you are anywhere else. You're going to have adjustments. Now, if you choose to move to Chiang Mai, Thailand, you're going to have more of an adjustment. You're going to have more things that you're going to have a harder time getting done than you are if you move to Dublin, for example, or even Singapore. Why? Because you have a higher quality of service providers in a place like a Dublin or a London or a Singapore than you do in Chiang Mai, Thailand, or Vilcabamba, Ecuador. And so how much of an adventure do you want can somewhat be dictated by how much money you have. Some of us, by the way, I've been happy for all these years to get away from some of the stuff that's happening in the Western world. I've been happy to kind of be a bit more chill. I still go and buy a lot of stuff in person at the mall. I'm not ordering everything off of Amazon. And quite frankly, I like being a little bit detached from some of the tech stuff by living in countries that don't have quite as many services at times. But the idea that if you don't have money, you can't live overseas is ridiculous. Because in fact, quite frankly, with inflation at all-time highs right now in many Western countries, the idea of living overseas, buying a property that you own without debt, having a lower cost of living, having better quality food at a much lower price, maybe not needing a car, that's a great way to stretch your dollars, stretch your euros further. And then the last point he makes is, well, what if you don't have an ancestry passport? If you're not lucky enough to be born with an Irish or Italian relative, to me, it's totally irrelevant, because I can get a residence permit in Ireland or Italy or anywhere else that I want for the most part in Europe. As an investor, as someone who has an income, as any number of things. And if I don't want to go to Europe, then there's plenty of residence programs all around the world and citizenship programs too. And so I think that some people are looking for living overseas to be the magic bullet that cures all of their ills. I do believe that, again, if you've got problems, hey, I'm paying 40% of my business profits in tax, that's a problem. You're going to grow your business a lot slower than you could. And there's probably a competitor who's incorporated in Malta who's going to clean your clock, because they've got 35% more cash to play with at the end of the day. If they're at the same profitability, they can reinvest that and grow faster. If you've got a portfolio, you're going to grow your wealth a lot faster, not having high Western capital gains tax rates. And again, you can extend that to freedom. You can have more freedom in other countries. You've seen that in recent years. Australians and Canadians have had a lot of problems in particular. If you want a better lifestyle, you can have that. You get to define what that is. But don't think that everything is going to be perfect. I would hope that you understand that I go through struggles. There's times that are frustrating. Listen, I had to call 4 maid services recently when I came back. And the first 3 didn't show up. That's annoying. And I always think to myself, I'll bet that in the United States it's working. And then I call one of my friends in the United States and they're like, dude, I called the cable company to fix something a month ago. They still haven't even come over. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're paying 43% tax. I'm not. And all right, I'll take the struggle of having to call a couple of maid companies. I think that we probably all underestimate how many challenges and frustrations we have in our own country because it just feels natural, right? When I lived in the United States, you had plenty of frustrations, but it's like, oh, that's just how it goes. When you move overseas, the frustrations kind of they hit you a little bit harder because it's a different culture, it's a different way of responding. In some countries, people are just naturally late, and so it's kind of frustrating. Like, why are you an hour late? Don't move to that country if you don't like people being late. If you don't like people showing up late, don't move to Latin America. Don't move to parts of Southern Europe. Don't move to parts of Southeast Asia. Right? Find a place where people are on time. But this, life overseas is not perfect. But you know what? Life nowhere is perfect. You can build a social life anywhere. You can build your career anywhere. You can build your business anywhere. Let me tell you something. We've helped people from Morocco and Egypt and Colombia, Vietnam, all kinds of countries. They built multi-million-dollar businesses in their country. If they can do it, why can't you? And if you already have, why not go somewhere where you can get a lot more value, save a lot of money in taxes? You're going to have the life that you make of it. And to me, that's why going where you're treated best is so powerful, because it puts you back in the driver's seat over every aspect of your life, where you're not in the driver's seat, just staying in the one country where you happened to be born.